there, and thank you for joining me today and taking the time to listen to GameStack Live. My name is Danny Chen, and I am a software architect in our Game Developer Experiences team here at Microsoft. What that means is that my job is to help shape and define what we do in our software and our services to empower game developers to bring their creative visions to reality. Now, I've spent more than 12 years now at Microsoft building game development platforms for all kinds of mediums, from the web, portable devices, MP3 players, PCs, and yes, I spent a lot of my time on Xbox as well. And I'd like to spend the next half hour talking with you about how Microsoft's expanding and accelerating game creation now and in the future through the cloud and with Azure. We'll talk about why this is important, why it's happening, share some stories from game creators that they have shared with us, and also talk about what technologies exist today and what we can do in the future that will make your lives easier and more productive as a game creator. So at Microsoft, our relationship with game developers goes far beyond just Xbox and D3D. Game studios and publishers around the world use our products and services at every stage of game development, from that initial pitch before you've even written any lines of code, till the eventual end-of-life plans when it's time to put the project on the shelf and move on to the next thing. And our mission as a company is to help you achieve more in everything that you want to do. And we're continuously trying to address that mission by talking with game developers of all sizes to figure out what your needs are both now and in the future, and find ways to keep you focused on building great content rather than fighting against technology. Our GameStack platform is what we call the software and services that are the building blocks for game creators. But this isn't static. This isn't something that we've shipped a couple of years ago and we're just maintaining. Modern games, and in particular AAA games, are massive. Their size and the scale of the code and the content that you're working on is much larger than what enterprise companies will work on with even smaller workforces trying to work on these works of arts. And that relationship of the code and the content you're working on outsizing the individual working on it is even true down to small indie studios. Leveraging the cloud is a consistent and growing theme among these creators as a strategy for how to manage this complexity while minimizing the cost and keeping you focused on where it really matters most for your game in the creative content. It's really exciting to see now how much this has pervaded different studios around the world. And one experience that I've had recently that I think is particularly noteworthy was I was mentoring a group of high school students who are working in a computer science class and building a video game. And this team of 3 built a really amazing retro remake of Pac-Man, all virtually through Microsoft Teams, Visual Studio, collaborating on GitHub and Discord. And it's just amazing to see how productive and how effective they were being able to work in this way. And I'm seeing this occur now in studios of all sizes. Now, throughout the past year, I've talked to dozens of different studios and hundreds of game creators about what they've done to be successful in areas that they would like us to work on in the future. It's pretty clear that decentralized development is increasingly becoming the norm for game studios everywhere. Being able to get talent from pretty much anywhere in the world, regardless of location, is critical to building your games. At the same time, a really big logistical challenge is just getting that data around the world. It's not uncommon to hear that a developer or an artist or a tester really needs to download and copy 150 gigabytes or more just to start their workday. And that's absolutely untenable if you're working from home. Content reviews are a critical part of the lifecycle of a game. Being able to get other people to review it, your publishers or even the press, and give you feedback during development is an important way of making sure that you have the right product. But it's often been impeded by the barrier of simply having to send a physical copy of your game somewhere, and there are also security concerns there. Game streaming is a really rising and fast-rising technology, and it makes obvious sense that there's interest in leveraging this for accelerating playtesting and other kinds of QA activities. At the same time, game creators don't just ship on a single platform. To reach the broadest audience, you really need to ship on a diverse set of platforms, and the cloud is something that makes obvious sense with pairing with that need. On the IT and the infrastructure side, it's just as critical for game studios as it is for enterprises that the services be that your studio relies on be centrally managed. They need to be modular so that they can integrate with your existing workflows on your own schedule. And naturally, as we see more and more investment in cloud streaming, it makes sense that we should have dev kits in the cloud at a minimum to enable automation. One of the studios that I think does a particularly great job of leveraging the cloud today is our very own Minecraft. And I invited with me today Steve Robinson from that team to talk a little bit about what they've done. Steve, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Danny. I'm great. I'm so excited to be joining you today.
Now, I got to say, Minecraft is just an incredible game. I love the fact that my nieces that are 5 and 7 here play it, and at the same time, my team at work plays it on a weekly basis.
That's great. I love how Minecraft spans generations of players. You know, so many opportunities to make new worlds, go on adventures, and have a lot of fun times with family and friends.
The other thing I'll say that I think is really noteworthy about Minecraft is just the sheer number of devices you guys ship on. It's like everything I look at plays Minecraft, which is just incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about how you achieve that?
I would love to. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll go over some highlights of how we currently use our cloud services in development of Minecraft and our goals for the future. So Minecraft has grown from the original Java game to a franchise of multiple code bases and a growing family of tiles and additions. Today we're going to zoom in on Bedrock, which is the name of the cross-platform Minecraft code base written in C++. The Bedrock codebase supports mobile, desktops, game consoles, VR, server apps for playing online, and the list keeps growing. Our mission is a continuous improvement to the build and test automation running on all platforms to help prevent new changes from breaking the game. The large matrix of build combinations adds up to a lot of complexity and a lot of scale demand. Thankfully, we have help from many great tools. We use Azure services for everything we can, such as virtual machines, functions, and storage. Azure DevOps covers much of our software development process, from sprint management to the build and test pipelines themselves. And GitHub is our primary source control service, with the pull request workflow being central to our continuous integration. We also use other cloud-oriented services such as PlayFab and App Center. So the Bedrock build today, by the numbers, 98% of the build, it's a cross-platform C++ build, all written in one build system in CMake. There's roughly 8,000 build jobs per day spread across 50 build variants. That includes all the platforms for the devices we support and multipliers like CPU architectures and graphics APIs. And 100% of this is built in the cloud today. It wasn't always that way. Our macOS build pool used to be 2 Mac Pros on someone's desk. Moving to Azure DevOps hosted agents let us get out of the business of Mac administration and easily scale out our Mac build resources. So looking ahead on build, we're mostly catching up to using modern tools already available to us. We want to be able to automatically spin up more build machines when we have heavy use and spin them down when we don't. We want our VMs right-sized for our current workload and monitoring that tells us when we need to adjust them. We want to distribute compilation across the pool to speed up the builds. And finally, we want to use packaging and caching of build artifacts, so we're only building what changed to get build feedback to developers even faster. Switching gears over to testing, we execute thousands of automated test runs a day and report millions of individual results. The end-to-end test automation pipeline is mostly Azure-based, which lets us run automation on and off premises. Currently, Android and iOS tests execute in the cloud through App Center, while the rest of the platforms are supported in on-premises test labs. This flexibility is great, but supporting on-prem test devices is complex and expensive. Looking ahead on test automation, our dream is to eliminate our on-premises footprint completely. It's a long road, but we'll get there step by step. Our Windows, Mac, and Linux systems are ripe for wholesale migration to Azure. With the Azure VM offerings getting better all the time, including now having access to GPUs, we believe we can do this cost effectively. We'll continue with working with Microsoft and other vendors, encouraging offering more cloud-based test execution services, similar to what we have today with iOS and Android in App Center. Leveraging device virtualization or emulation in Azure is something we want to look into as well. And finally, ExpressRoute will let us connect Azure-based networks to our on-premises networks. Even if a given device class needs to stay here in Redmond for now, at least the systems that support it can be moved into Azure. Every little bit helps. We're a big fan of the cloud because it helps us scale with our scale and complexity, and we want to do even more with it. We're looking forward to what GameStack Live has to offer and excited to continue our partnership with Azure. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you, Steve. That's really great. Appreciate you sharing that with us today. So Minecraft does a really great job of scaling out a lot of devices, but our friends over at Bandai Namco had a little bit of a different challenge this year, and I'd like to invite Yageshi-san from their Engineering and Network Systems Department to talk to you a little bit about what they have done. Yageshi, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, I'm Takesh. Good morning from Tokyo.
Could you please tell us a little bit about what you have done with Azure? It's been pretty amazing to hear about it.
Sure. At Bandai Namco Studios, we are leveraging Azure to build a custom CI/CD pipeline for our Unity-based projects. As I'll describe in further detail in our full talk, the impact of COVID-19 has accelerated the need to move off our on-prem hardware. We are building cloud-based for a CI/CD pipeline using a combination of Unity build server, Azure DevOps, and custom virtual machines. In addition to that, we are using App Center. We are using Azure DevOps partially because of its tight integration with Azure and Azure Active Directory. I recommend it for organization and teams using Microsoft 365 or Visual Studio subscription. App Center allows us to build from sources and test on actual devices on the cloud, then distribute the app and automatically update for testers. So thank you so much. And please come to my full talk where I go into detail on how to set this up.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. I definitely will be catching your full talk there.
Yeah, thank you.
So one of the questions that I get asked a lot when we talk about Azure services for developers is, how do we bridge the gap? What does it mean for a developer with an on-premise investment to start migrating over to Azure? And we discussed this a lot with our partners. And as we were going through this, it became clear that there's a couple of key requirements that get repeated over and over and over again. And so I've made it my job to make sure that our teams understand that these are really core tenets that underpin everything that we build. To begin with, our services really need to be modular. They need to be able to be adopted individually so they can fit with your existing workflows, rather than require lifting and shifting your entire pipeline over to Azure. Now, over time, you can adopt more and more services, but the migration is gradual and it's done on your time as it makes sense for your engineering and efficiency rather than us forcing it. The cloud isn't a wholesale monolithic solution. there will still be benefits to having a physical presence, whether it's social, collaborative, or even economic. And so it's really critical that every service and every solution that we provide makes sense in that hybrid scenario. And so that our cloud infrastructure and your on-premise infrastructure are working in concert and not wrestling with each other. And finally, flexibility means that you're capable of scaling up or scaling down usage and regularly monitoring and metering and auditing and just the kinds of things to make sure that you understand what services are being used and why they're being used and having the ability to influence that. And so when we think about the stages of development, we've broken them really down into sort of four distinct categories. Create is the phase that really talks about everything that goes into making your game, the content, the creativity, the code, and the inspiration. Build is more of a computationally intensive part. It's where you take all that output and you leverage the computational resources of the cloud or machines to build your game and produce the package that ultimately is picked up by someone who's going to play it. And in the validate phase, we really want to make sure that your investment is prioritized on finding the fun. And so anything that we can do to automate or offload the functional verification, although it's important, is a great choice for moving into the cloud. And then, of course, games are no longer done when they're released and put on store shelves. In fact, in many ways, that's the beginning of the game's lifecycle. So being able to continuously deploy into playtest environments or even into production environments and monitor your game running there is a critical component to any game these days. Now, there's a lot of services that are actually available in Azure today that game creators can take advantage or are already taking advantage. In the creation side, we're talking about code and content creation and the energy that you're really putting into your game. Obviously, Teams and things like Office 365 are great collaborative tools that a lot of people are using today. GitHub is something that you're probably familiar with in terms of a massive open source repository with tens of millions of people contributing to it on a regular basis. But there's also an enterprise side that's used by corporations and companies and even game studios around the world. This is not an open source version. This is secure, and it's a great way for you to offload the burden of managing that systems to a cloud provider like Microsoft. Real-time text translation and voice and text chat are services that rely on the cloud and are great ways of connecting your players together across regional divides. And so those are really awesome features to add into games. Build is something that I spend a lot of my time on because it's obviously ripe for moving into a cloud-based services. As you heard from Yogeshi-san, Azure DevOps is a really productive way to manage your build infrastructure and set up the custom build rules and the timing and the cadence for continuous integration and also production builds. Express routes and VPN solutions are something that Azure can do really well. And what I've heard a lot from developers these days is that they struggle with having good VPN solutions because oftentimes they're slow or they're not as feature-rich as they need for their own studios. VMs for build farms, it's critical and a way for you to offload your builds up to the cloud. And when you're talking about the cloud, being able to produce custom services for your own engineers to build out your own custom engineering rules and policies and infrastructure, Azure Functions is something that I've actually learned a lot more about recently as I've been working on a project here at work. And it turns out it's a really simple way to write some small C# code that goes up and becomes a service that scales out rapidly. So something for you to definitely look into. Invalidate, when we're talking about automated production of your automated testing of your game, like you heard from the Minecraft team, App Center is a great way to access a huge breadth of iOS and Android devices, and the collection grows all the time. And again, Azure DevOps is a way to sort of manage that schedule and that cadence and the policies for how you run that work. And Microsoft has a wealth of resources for managing your game through the release process and post-release. In particular, PlayFab is a fantastic service for handling live ops of your game once it's released and managing offers and the health of your game in the world of your players. Our Azure backend services also offer a lot of the kinds of first-class experiences that developers and players have come to expect, like leaderboards, tournaments, notifications, and the analytics and traffic management that you need to manage your game. But it's also clear to us at Microsoft that there's a lot more that we can do. And so we spend a lot of time talking with our partners about what's next for them. And these are really my favorite conversations when I get to go to a developer and ask them, so tell me what would make you more productive? And then we have these great discussions and the ideas just start flowing. And so these are really good opportunities for us to think about what we can do next. In terms of content creation, having more remote content management tools or content creation tools that are sitting in the cloud to make it easier for you to do your work from anywhere in the world. Obviously, there's a really big problem with asset management and collaboration and just simply moving the data around, and that's something the cloud is very good at and Azure is very good at. It's a necessity these days to use virtualized file systems, including virtualized source control, as a way to optimize the actual raw storage transfers that you need from a day-to-day basis. Another place where the cloud has a really natural fit, of course, is in that build systems. And while offloading your number crunching and your code, your content builds up to the cloud is something that a lot of studios have found success in today, there's a lot more that we can do in the future. Distributed build systems make a lot more sense. Making it easier to do continuous integration in the cloud, again, is something that we definitely want to invest in more and love to talk to you more about. And validation is a huge opportunity for us in the cloud as well. Automated playtesting, cloud streaming, and getting your content out to your QA testers and your play testers even more rapidly than is available today. And then, as I mentioned, games really start their lives once you release them. And so there's a lot that we can do, and we'd love to partner with you on, about managing your game after it's released, whether it's automated submissions to storefronts, being smart about how it's delivered in different localities, and just the general servicing lifetime. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me today and to listen to Steve and Yukeshi's son talk about what they've done. If you're interested in learning more about how you can leverage the cloud within your own game production, there's a lot of different ways that you can reach out to us. Contact your Microsoft Gaming representative and they'll help you get started. Of course, the Bandai Namco GSL presentation is something you definitely don't want to miss. And look out for early adopter opportunities as you see them become published. Thank you for your time.